All right, I want to welcome everybody to the Suicide and Self-Harm Prevention Awareness Program that we're doing tonight at West Hardin. And we appreciate being invited to come and do the presentation. My name is Anita Connor. I'm with Elizabethtown Partners in Counseling. And we have a couple of other facilitators that will be assisting tonight. With the children's group, we have Ashley Harris and Carolina Polgar that will be working on coping skills with the younger children. And then we also have Kathy Turner that's going to be helping out in here in the adult group as we discuss suicide and self-harm prevention awareness tonight. So there are a couple of things that I want to make sure that we go over just regarding privacy and confidentiality. That in the group we can ask general questions and follow-up questions, but to please avoid asking about specific individuals or specific circumstances that may need more individualized attention. We do have in the handouts and the folders that we're giving resources so that people can contact crisis centers or mental health facilities in the area. If anyone feels that there is an immediate need for themselves or somebody else tonight, please see one of us and we will help you all find a resource and a support tonight that can meet that immediate need. So if you would like, you can look at your folders. Inside your folders, you're going to find like some information that we're going to be covering tonight, as well as some extra information that may apply more specific to different circumstances. There are materials specific to our area as far as mental health services, community supports, and resources that are available to families and children in our area that has been put together. There's also national and state hotlines and contact information that you can use. On the right-hand side of your folder, you're going to find information about suicide and self-harm awareness, facts, and additional resources that you can follow up on online. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay? All right. So this month, September, is National Suicide and Self-Harm Awareness Prevention Month. And there are many reasons and many factors that went into making September a month of awareness. One of the main things that groups are focusing on this year is addressing the stigma that's attached with accessing mental health care and discussing suicide and self-harm, because in many areas and in many settings, those topics are considered taboo, or they're kept in secret and they're minimized. The awareness part that we want to talk about tonight are the factors that people have already in their community, in their home, in their schools, that allow a buffer, so to speak, as part of a natural prevention of suicide. The other part is that there needs to be an awareness of discussion, an awareness that openness to discuss honestly and without judgment the topic of suicide and self-harm. And there are different ways that we do that as adults, as caregivers, teachers, members of the community, that can encourage younger people to be willing to talk. But for them to be willing to talk, we also have to be willing to talk and address difficult things, emotions that might arise in ourselves. So what I thought we could first do tonight is to discuss some of the myths or beliefs about suicide in general. So what may be a couple of myths or beliefs about suicide, whether it's our own beliefs, what we've heard, what's portrayed in the media. It only happens to people from bad homes.
It happens to other people, not me.
Yep.
Attention seeking.
We hear this a lot. Attention seeking. What else?
It's just a phase. Where they're not serious.
They're just joking around.
Yeah.
What about myths or beliefs? Which age groups does it affect the most?
High schoolers.
What about beliefs as far as like race, ethnicity, social, economical status? Okay. So these are really good. The idea that it happens to other people doesn't happen to me, or it only happens to people from another home. You think about like, what does that point towards? It points towards something outside of my comfort zone, something that we wouldn't consider. So, who does suicide affect? It affects all of us.
Yeah,
Everybody.
everybody.
And it's not just people from whether it's labeled a bad home, a good home. It happens across all age spans, races, ethnicity. Now there are different rates and everything, but whether people come from a background of poverty or wealth, whether they come from urban, rural, it happens. It's cross-sectional, okay? This gives comfort. It's a false comfort because it's not going to happen to me. It happens to other people. It happens to high schoolers. The highest rate of suicide occurs with men between the ages of 46 and 64. That's the highest rate. It is a leading cause of death for younger people, and overall in the United States, it is the 12th leading cause of death right now. But this is where we see a lot of media attention, okay? But it does occur across all generations, all age groups. The attention-seeking part. This is another one of the belief systems similar to this. It's attention-seeking. And what do we do whenever we feel like kids are attention-seeking? Or adults? We dismiss it. It's not important. And we know that when we dismiss something like suicide or self-harm, that's one of the things that creates more suicide attempts, more self-harm, behaviors that lead and escalate to decisions to die by suicide. Because we're dismissing it. We're not just dismissing the behavior, we're dismissing the person. We're dismissing the problems. The just a phase, that's real similar to some of the biases and the myths that's also associated with self-harm, just like the attention-seeking. It's just a phase, they're going to get out of it. And while that may be a comforting false thought to people that care about a person, it's very dangerous to have those types of beliefs because it's not just a phase. They're just joking around. And working with children, whether it's in school or the mental health setting, we do hear this a whole lot. Well, I was just kidding. I just said that. I didn't mean it. To consider the behavior or comment, they were just joking around when it comes to suicide, self-harm, suicidal ideations. It falls underneath all of these as being, it's a comforting thought, but it's a false thought. And it's not going to help the child. It's not going to help us. It is not going to help increase awareness. And that's what we have to do. And part of the increasing the awareness is starting honest conversations. Okay? A couple other myths. What about how effective is treatment? Sometimes we get feedback that treatment doesn't work. It does work. It does work. There's evidence-based studies and evidence-based practices that show therapeutic treatment, use of medication, combinations of various types of cognitive behavioral therapy, recreational therapy, music therapy. It does work. Okay?
But sometimes it's how serious so, all day long you can go to therapy, but if there's situations that's happening to a person and those situations aren't being changed, a lot of times that can, situations have to change sometimes no matter how much therapy you're getting. And I think that's something that a lot of times as a parent, whether it's pride or you're not wanting to change or you're thinking they're going to be fine, that, thinking it's a phase or whatever. I mean, you can take them to treatment, but if you're not helping those situations change at home or whatever is going on to trigger those situations.
And that's a real good point. And especially with younger people, and it's also true with adults, but I'm just going to speak like to the younger person. If treatment is agreed upon, there has to be a willingness to participate in therapy by the whole family. Because with the children, the multiple factors that go into the risks, the protective factors that help buffer all the stressors of different developmental phases, if those things are not addressed, treatment alone doesn't work. And whenever we say like treatment interventions, it is, especially with younger people, you have to get the family involved so that they will talk. Because one of the core problems with suicidal ideations, self-harm, mood disorders, anxiety, is this tendency, I don't want to talk, I don't want to share, because there's a lot of guilt and shame. And the guilt and shame just continues if the family doesn't open up and accept one another and accept that things do have to change. So that was a good point. Any other comments about some of the myths of suicide? Okay. And again, a lot of times our myths in our society are helpful in a very poor way, as far as they're not based on truth. So we're believing in something that's not real, and we're getting absolutely nowhere. Okay? And the awareness part is we have to be real. We have to be open to having really hard discussions and be open to dealing with the truth of the matter. And a lot of times our truths are what creates our poor coping skills. Okay? So I wanted to also go over some of the warning signs that we may be aware of. Oh, it's not going. There we go. So, and then let's say common, and then some of the other ones that aren't so common. Whenever you think about what might be a common sign or a red flag that somebody is thinking about suicide, thinking about self-harm, what are some warning signs that you might look for as a parent or an educator?
Change in behavior, isolating themselves.
Okay. Change in behavior, isolation.
Getting rid of some of their favorite items.
Okay.
Some people, if they're self-harming, they'll wear like long sleeves all the time. So if it's July and you're in a hoodie, that could be a concern.
Okay.
Some of their peers have attempted or committed suicide.
Okay. So we've got change in behaviors, isolation. They're getting rid of favorite items, wearing inappropriate clothing, long sleeves in the summer. That there's been a relationship, or they have a relationship with someone who has died by suicide.
They've written statements
Okay.
or made comments to teachers or.
Okay. So talking about suicide or harming. Comments.
More impulsive.
Good. Okay.
Risk-taking behavior, I guess.
Looking overwhelmed,
What did you say?
being overwhelmed easily.
Okay. Yeah, you said like drugs or alcohol?
Yeah.
Okay.
Self-destructive kind of behavior.
Okay. Okay, this is a good list. So from the perspective of an individual that begins thinking about suicide and makes the decision to act on that, what do you imagine in your personal experience and education that the goal of suicide is for a person? What's the goal?
To make the pain stop.
Sometimes to punish other people.
Okay. Need a little thing here. Okay. For the pain to stop. Punish.
Be alone.
Okay. To make the pain stop, punish other people, and to be alone. Okay. So the goal of suicide is to stop the pain. The goal of suicide is to die. And that decision-making process, the goal to die, is because there's an overwhelming, intense pain that is unbearable. Suicide's very unpredictable. We know quite a bit about certain risk factors. We know quite a bit about escalating behaviors. But to sit a group of people down and to be able to predict who may or may not choose that, we can't really do that, okay? So by using warning signs, by opening up honest discussions, we can have a higher chance of not just developing a connection, strengthening a relationship with a person, but to also potentially help and intervene, okay? What changes in behavior do we typically look for whenever we suspect people are thinking about suicide, or we think that they're at risk of harming themselves? The isolation is one, right?
Erratic behavior,
Yeah.
shutting down.
So wouldn't the clothing come into that too, with changing of behavior, because they're starting to cover their scars and things, I just picture that as a change of behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it definitely would fit underneath that category as a change in behavior. There are cycles of, especially with self-harm, where there may be periods of time where a person may go a certain period of time and there's no self-harming. And then there may be a trigger where they begin to self-harm again. And you would see more secretive behavior. You may see wearing long sleeves in the summertime, or avoiding activities like PE, wearing shorts, different things like that. Yeah, and that can be a warning sign. One of the changes in behavior that is on the escalating side of suicidal ideation and the planning phase is not just the erratic and impulsive behaviors, but aggressive behaviors. A lot of anger comes out, a lot of frustration. So you may see people being very erratic, impulsive, loud, and aggressive, pushing people away. That happens. The drug and alcohol use, it can fall into a couple of different categories, and a lot of these warning signs do overlap, and they're very similar for both suicide and self-harm. And I'll get into the difference in just a second, suicide versus self-harm. The behaviors and the responses to attempting to cope with the intense emotional pain is expressed differently by each person. There may be some similarities, but as a parent, as a caregiver, one of the things that we encourage people to keep in mind is each person is individualized in the way that they express sadness, anxiety, aggression, disappointment, happiness, and joy. It is individualized to them. You know, we have some children that it's real hard to tell whether they're happy or sad, and others, you know, right away. The same with adults. A lot of times we may be wearing masks, and other times we may not be wearing masks. Okay. A couple of other warning signs to look at, and all these are listed out in the handouts in the folder. Changes in sleep, changes in eating, along with increased writing, drawing, making comments about suicide, having great difficulty focusing and concentrating. May see like a huge decline in schoolwork, in activities that they may have excelled in the past. Different changes as far as what's consistent and predictable for that person. Okay, so we're going to focus a little bit on aspects of self-harm. Similar to suicide in the way that it's presented, and maybe certain types of beliefs that we have about it, what are some specific beliefs that individuals, families, and communities may have about self-harm that may not either be helpful or they're not accurate? It said earlier that it was a way of attention seeking.
Some people see it as a form of weakness.
Okay.
Phase.
It's kind of a trend thing amongst peers.
Are there certain types of groups that are seen as, well, that group tends to self-harm more than another group? Okay. Which groups do you?
Goth group or
Okay.
the emo groups.
Okay. Girls, boys.
I say, yeah, that's another thing. Among teenage girls, I would say like maybe if that goth and emo groups, maybe they show it more, but there is a lot of teen girls that can, just look perfectly fine, and they are self-harming in places. They just know so much how to do it that they do it in places that nobody will ever find out. So they show less, but doesn't mean they're not doing it or going through that pain.
Right. And these are, there is truth, like in the group, in a population of individuals that self-harm, there are going to be some people that also fall into or identify with, I'm goth, I'm emo, I'm a teenage girl. But it affects a huge population. You're looking at from maybe as early as 9, but typically 11 to 24. And then the group of this group that does not get treatment or things do not change, it continues on and it can go all the way through the lifespan. Okay. But typically, media, the portrayal is, this is the group. Okay? It's sensationalized to a degree, and anytime it's sensationalized, the truth of it falls away. It's similar to, that's not my family, that's somebody else. Because you're identifying a group, a specific group, and it's individuals. The self-harm, what's the goal of self-harm?
manage the pain.
To feel control when it comes to the pain.
Cope with the pain, control. And where suicide, the goal is to die, to stop the pain, to stop the problem. Self-harm, the goal is to cope with the pain, to control it, and to find relief. All right? And there, in the handout, there's a little bit more like detail in explaining how it is that whenever our body's injured, we do immediately feel a sense of relief, okay? There is a change in our body. When somebody's extremely upset and they cut themselves, they pinch themselves, they do something of that nature where it's a physical injury, they feel a relief. It's very temporary, and it can become habitual, and then it can escalate. But the goal is to feel something different and to cope with the pain, okay? What are some self-harming behaviors that we typically think of? I'm sorry, what did you say? Cutting, yeah.
There is also emotional self-harm, which, they become very negative towards themselves,
Yeah,
and they're pretty much bullying themselves to feel bad about who they are, or repeat to themselves they do everything wrong, they're ugly, they're fat, they're no valuable.
that's right. All of this falls underneath the self-destructive. So not every behavior that is labeled self-destructive is in fact like self-harming, but many are. It's the intent. If I'm being self-destructive because I do not feel like I'm worthy and I want to punish myself, then that's self-harm, okay? So it's the intent, it's the thought process. And that's very significant, and one of the things that whenever we have discussions with people that we love, young people, adults, is to look at that intent. Is the intent, I'm going to harm myself because I need to be punished, I'm not worthy? That can help open up the discussion, because those are based on thinking errors. And the core, are thinking errors, which affects the self-esteem, okay? So in self-destructive behaviors, a lot of times there's going to be the drugs and alcohol. There's going to be risk-taking behaviors, self-sabotaging relationships, pushing people away, people that want to help. Again, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve that. I'm going to punish myself. So people they get pushed away. There's head banging, pulling hair, placing self in situations that are extremely dangerous. All right. Any questions about self-harming behaviors? I do want to go back over here on some of the myths and beliefs. How a person is viewed. When it's viewed as a weakness, similar to like the suicidal ideations or suicide attempts, think about what these beliefs go toward. You're weak. It's just a phase. Let's dismiss it. You're just doing what everybody else does. Those all go to the self-esteem part, which reinforces that negative belief. I'm not worthy. It's not a weakness. We mentioned it's a way of coping. It's not a phase or a trend. It's a way of coping. And the phase and the trend, again, are comfort thoughts. What about the element of mental illness, mental health conditions, and specifically like childhood adverse experiences? How might those aspects play into risk factors for suicide and self-harm?
Whether they had trauma.
Mm-hmm. How does mental health issues or beliefs in a family and adverse childhood experiences, trauma experiences, how do those two things specifically make it difficult to talk to one another in a family about suicide and self-harm?
Lack of trust, if there's trauma in the family, lack of
Right.
trust.
Okay.
I mean, like for the ACEs, I mean, you know, if your basic needs aren't getting met, you know, and that's supposed to be met by your caregiver, then, you know, like she said with the trust, or they're the ones that's supposed to be loving me and protecting me, and if they don't even love me or protect me and care about me, why should I?
Okay.
And there's poor communication, understanding.
And kids that have been through traumas like abuse and things like that, they have a huge lack of self-esteem and self-worth.
Okay. Just those alone. So these are risk factors. There's many risk factors, but because we're running short on time, I wanted to focus on these two specifically. If young children have adverse childhood experiences, experiences of trauma, neglect, abuse, if there's mental health issues in the family that have not been addressed, it goes to, like you said, their basic needs typically are not being met. There's a lack of trust or a potential of lack of trust because your caregiver is not taking care of you. You cannot expect like stability and predictability sometimes whenever these things co-occur. It does reinforce the negative core beliefs that children establish. Well, my folks can't take care of me. I wonder what I did wrong. Why do I not have this? Why do I always feel bad? Why am I being yelled at? Nobody loves me. The love's not there. The nurturing's not there. And children get their self-esteem and their self-worth from their primary support group, early childhood. So if those are low, it's going to build up the negative core beliefs, I'm not worthy. And there will be a lack of communication. Okay? Because of these things. If you don't have trust and your basic needs aren't being met, it's really hard to communicate what you need to the people that are in your group. Okay? So those are huge risk factors. That does not mean that people or individuals that experience this are going to make the decision to self-harm or to die by suicide. Because the other part there's resiliency and there are protective factors. And I think though these handouts in the folders are very important. Because the protective factors show us with research and results that it buffers so much of the risk factors in our children's lives and in adult lives. So whenever you all hear the word like protective factor, what comes to mind? And think in terms of basic needs.
The things that the caregivers do to keep the children protected and safe.
You think about like the value of a support system. If it is well developed, sometimes that's rare, okay? According to studies on resiliency, a support system can be one trusted adult, and that can make a difference, okay? The more people that are reliable, dependable, and present in a support system, the better, okay? When we think about being safe and protected, usually that entails like the feeling that I'm not being judged, I'm cared about, people are going to listen to me, okay? And that's another big thing, is that we listen, whether we hear it verbally or we see it in a behavior.
You can ask questions too.
Yeah. And think about the questions we ask. How do we ask questions? You know, direct questions, especially whenever it has to do with suicide or self-harm. Sometimes the idea that if we talk about it, if we verbalize it, we're going to encourage like suicidal ideations or self-harming behaviors. And that's not true. It is actually shown like opening up questions, discussions, will reduce the frequency of suicidal ideations. Okay? It's okay to ask questions, and that's part of the awareness, is finding out what the answers are to those questions and acting on them.
And it's important to accept those answers to how they are
Yeah.
without, like you said, judging or, make them feel bad about their feelings.
Yeah. There's a good handout in the folder that will help caregivers validate their own feelings. You think about hearing somebody that you care about and you love say, hey, I've been cutting, or I've been doing risk-taking behaviors, I'm making a plan, I'm thinking about suicide. All the emotions that a person might go through. It's very hard to control those emotions so that you can be calm and listen and ask questions and find out how you can help. So that is one of the important things to look at as caregivers. What are some of the things that talking about that subject or addressing that problem may bring up? You know, we may have our own triggers. We may have our own experiences. We may know people in our own lives that the children don't, that have experienced that, and it can be very difficult. So just as important as it is to figure out what it is the child or the adolescent needs, it's also important to understand what we need as an adults so that we can provide the basic needs and provide as many protective factors as possible. Okay. So we're almost out of time, and I did not get to cover all the information that I had planned on covering. Are there questions at this point that you all would like to have answered, or comments that we need to maybe address before we wrap up? Okay, all right. You guys were a great group. I appreciate you all being here and the participation and everything. All right, thank you.
That's why we have questions.
No there's no quiz, so, but if you all do have questions or comments afterwards, our email address, phone number and everything is in the folders, and if you just send it to me, put my name on it, I will get back to everybody, okay? All right, thank you.
My name is Ashley Harris, and I am a therapist with Elizabethtown Partners in Counseling. And this is Carolina Pulgar, case manager with Elizabethtown Partners in Counseling. And we are here tonight as part of a presentation at West Hardin regarding suicide awareness and self-harm prevention.
We have discovered with our experience that approaching this type of subjects with a positive view give us much more results. So the way we do it is we, instead of talking about don't kill yourself, don't do this, like everything dark and negative, we try to do it from a positive point of view, which will be more like, let's just discuss about everything in life that you get to enjoy, everything that's pretty out there, all the opportunities you will have. Let's also, very important, talk about support system. If you feel some kind of way, we all have those moments, so go ahead and find who is the people you can trust, find who is the people that is there for you, talk to them, ask for help. There is no shame in asking for help. When we feel some kind of way, we all got those moments, and it's totally okay to feel that way sometimes, and just tell people. Another thing that we also work with is, of course, coping skills.
Some of the coping skills we found that works really well with children are finding, like Ms. Pulgar said, support systems, being able to talk to someone who is not going to judge them so that they feel free to express how they feel, why they feel that way. Another thing is coping with the stress that we all experience, that all of our kids experience in school especially. Learning about bullying, about their impact on others, as well as how others' words can impact them, and how to deal with that, how to cope with that, how to ask for help when they need it.
Like we said before, I mean, important. Let's just think about all the good things life has for us, and instead of thinking about why we don't want to be there, let's just think about and focus on why we do want to be here, why we want to take advantage of this opportunity called life.